We can really prepare form the children.
Even if the desks are still missing here in Madang, in the towns, the state schools are normally good. It's totally different away from the towns. There, it's often not the pupils, but the teachers who miss lessons for weeks on end.
Even if there are schools, but the schools are not functioning well. So we saw that as a need for us to go into like literacy program. So we were asking beside the education. But these old people who have who are not literate, who don't need to write or read, then we also want to target them later on. Literacy program for the village.
A vocational school up country. We are in Mingende, 2 hours by car southeast of Mount Hagen. Here, young men are trained to become car mechanics. Commercially astute immigrants from Asia, above all China, are increasingly pushing their way into the business world of Papua New Guinea. Only a good apprenticeship can help the locals to have a chance. A Holy Spirit missionary sister from Indonesia runs the school. As well as car mechanics, joiners and bakers are taught their trade here. The school head, Sister Andrea, teaches the course for future tailors herself.
Pay attention, please. Take your ruler. If you finish like this, you turn. Yeah? This right side. Yeah? Right side. You measure from here 2 centimeters. Okay? With your tape.
Wherever the nuns teach, they don't want to just pass on skills. Even when she was still a university lecturer, the provincial head of the order already had one aim above all.
I had a vision of forming or educating young people, men and women, to be good and accurate and honest and so on. Because at the present time, you hear about corruption. And when I see all my former students who are now working, and I would ask them, how are you doing? I said, are you fighting this corruption? So my vision was then to prepare young men and women to be credible in the field of accountancy, and also that they can also be socially responsible, that they help see the need of the people around them, especially the poor and the needy.
Nicht nur das Land hat sich unter dem Einfluss der Missionarinnen und Missionare.
It's not just the country that's changed due to the influence of the missionaries. The order itself has also gone through a profound change over the last 100 years. In the past, it was mainly Germans and Dutch who came here, with a strong desire to get things done, also using the financial opportunities available through the links back home. Now the movement is starting to go in the opposite direction. Yes, local nuns, even from New Guinea, are starting to go to other countries to help there to make the world a better place. Every second local nun, so the provincial head of the order told us, is sent to one of the order's projects abroad. But even the nuns who stay in the country have to break new ground. Over decades, their fellow countrymen have got used to the white missionaries. All the more, now young nuns see themselves called to shape the future of their country themselves, not least so they can change their people from the inside. We asked the sisters on the Sepik about their motives.
Visiting the church is on the program today at the Timbunke kindergarten. Sister Skula and Sister Agnes are sharing this task with Sister Monica, who's already worked as a pastoral assistant in Germany. Practicing the sign of the cross is just one small aspect on the difficult path of bringing the faith home to the little ones, showing how you'd live it.
For me personally, I'm interested in the pastoral field. Last year I was going out to the places, the villages, to give courses. or instructions, sacramental instructions to the people. And was also teaching in the community primary school here. And I like this job.
Sister Agnes has a special talent for telling Bible stories. For Sister Monica, that's something which she not only finds fascinating about her fellow nun, but also where she can copy a thing or two. For Sister Agnes, a Christian upbringing is far more than just religious education. As someone who has known the culture of her country since she was a child, she's trying to change the way people think.
In our culture, we have this women have no rights in the culture. I mean, in the group like this. Women, they don't have right to talk. They don't have right to sit in the meeting where the men are. So I want to bring this into the heads of men, that we are all equal. We are all created by God, and we have the same breath of God in us, so we are all equal. So looking into our culture, the women, they have no rights to be equal with men. When men make decision, women are not allowed to change it. They have to follow it only. As a woman from this country, I have to help to bring myself into them. So in this kind of case, I want them to change.
Ich sehe es nicht als Aufpropfen des Christentums.
I don't see it as an imposition of Christianity, but as giving them a bit of life to hang on to, given the challenges of our time. The break with their roots is happening anyway. The influence of the towns, the newer technical developments, they're also coming here, into the villages, and the people are challenged to find an answer to all that. And I think we Christians really have got a leitmotif in the gospel that can open up new horizons. And just from the attitude to peace, when I think how for many years they fought, and the villages were decimated time and again because they were fighting each other. And they say themselves, that's one of the great achievements, that a bit of peace has come to the country out of Christian faith.
Jahre, die ein Land,
100 years which have changed a land, a people. 100 often strenuous years which would certainly have turned out differently if Mother Josefa hadn't sent those first nuns. We weren't just impressed by this historical achievement. What impressed us above all were two things with which the sisters are continuing this work. The way they see what they're doing as natural and their trust in God. They put themselves through heat and physical strain, mosquito bites and malaria, all in the struggle for a better future for the people of Papua New Guinea.
Josefa übrigens ist nur wenige Monate nach unserer Reise in das Verzeichnis der Seligen aufgenommen worden.
And by the way, a few months after our trip, Mother Josefa was beatified. It's the Catholic Church's recognition of a life's work that goes far beyond Papua New Guinea and to this day continues to bear fruit all over the world. Until the next broadcast, may your time be blessed.
Bis zur nächsten Sendung. Eine gesegnete Zeit. Grüß Gott und herzlich willkommen zu Grenzenlos.
It's a particularly nasty insult in the Philippines when you say to someone, you Mangyan. Mangyan, they're short-statured mountain people on the island of Mindoro. For many people, they're underdeveloped primitives, stupid, uncultured, and what's more, they stink. Small wonder then that more and more they're being pushed back into the middle of the island. We visited with a missionary these shy people in the jungles of Mindoro, and so got to know more about their battle for survival.
That's the building material for a new house. For centuries, the Mangyan have built their huts out of bamboo and straw. How long the 7-member family will live in their new home is questionable. Just a few weeks ago, a hurricane swept over the island, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. But time and again the open fires too razed the huts to the ground. The Mangyan are used to these dangers. Against the threats of the last few decades, they are far more helpless. We're in Talsi, a Mangyan village in the mountains of southern Mindoro. 8 families live here. The Mangyan work the rice exactly as their forefathers did. Although it's only a few hundred kilometers to Manila as the crow flies, here you get the feeling of entering a world in which time has stood still. Just 2 generations ago, these families still lived on the coast. Fertile farming land and fishing made survival much easier there. But then came the so-called lowlanders.
Die Mangyan, die am Meer gelebt haben,
The Magyans who live by the sea, who had the fertile plains, were just driven off and pushed back into the mountains.
einfach abgedrängt und in die Berge gedrängt.
He knows what he's talking about. For more than 40 years, Ewald Dinter has lived on the Philippines. For over 20 with the Mangyan. It took a while before the shy mountain people realized that the German hadn't come like the other foreigners to seize their property and possessions.
Da die Berge, die ganzen Bananen da drüben.
They're the mountains, all the bananas there, on their land. The lowlanders now grow and sell everything. That's just happened in the last 20, 30 years, that they've been simply pushed out. They're intimidated and several even come with revolvers.
100 years ago, Mindoro still belonged to the Mangyan. Then, 40,000 people lived on the Philippine island. Today there are over 1 million who share the 10,000 square kilometers. The former owners have become a minority, pushed back into the mountains more and more. Their peace-loving nature and hospitality became their undoing.
A family comes along and says, "Can we just build ourselves a tiny little house here?" Yes, of course, we've got enough land. Then along comes the next family. They settle there. Then they come and say, "You've got a water buffalo, haven't you? Can we borrow it?" Yes, of course. But then we have to have that in writing. We have to draw up a contract. No, you don't need to do that. You'll give him back, I know. The immigrants insisted, presented a document. The Mangyan put his fingerprint at the bottom, and 2 weeks later the police came into the mountains and took him off to jail. Why? He'd committed theft. To what, he said. But I haven't stolen anything. Yes, you have. These 200 hectares aren't yours anymore. But despite that, you've sold them. And that's not just an isolated incident. There aren't just hundreds of such examples, but thousands.
Mangyan sind eigentlich zu friedvoll.
The Mangyan are actually too peace-loving for this hard world. They give in. They avoid a fight. To them, peace and tolerance are everything.
Absolut. Mga ala-ala sa kaya hindi niya istorbo nila. At sila umattend misa rin, Katoliko.
Father Dinter is a missionary of the Divine Word. When the bishop entrusted him with the pastoral care of the Mangyan 20 years ago, it was clear to him that the mission to the Mangyan had to be primarily a struggle for the rights of this threatened people. Only a small part of the 7 different Mangyan tribes are Christian. After all, Christianity is the religion of the intruders.
Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Sumainyo ang Panginoon. Ja, das Wort Christ kann man
Yes, actually, you can't really use the word Christian here. The image a Mangyan has of a Christian is that it's someone who lies, who steals, whom you can't trust.
Today, the Mangyan know that the missionary is not primarily there to convert them, but he does want to show them that faith in Jesus liberates you from a dread of evil spirits and demons, something which is widespread in the belief of the Mangyan.
Ja, die Angst vor den bösen Geistern, die ist
The fear of evil spirits is very, very great. You're surrounded by it everywhere you go. Here, when a black butterfly comes, you think, what does that mean? But now, when I take an example from the Bible and say, Jesus drives out the evil spirits, there is someone who's stronger.
die bösen Geister aus. Da ist doch jemand, der stärker ist.
When the missionary comes every 4 to 6 weeks, it's not just to a service of worship. He sleeps with a family or in a hut, living like the Mangyan themselves. There are no distractions here, no radio, no electricity. Here you have time.
Einige sind 6 Stunden oder
Some of them are 6 or 7 hours away, so you can't visit just for an hour, you stay overnight. Talk with the people, listen, and they come again and again with land problems and what they're lacking, and where they would like support, and hope to find it at the Mangyan Mission.
und hoffen, dass sie es finden bei der Mangyan Mission.
Es hat uns beeindruckt, mitzuerleben.
It made a great impression on us to experience how the priest is on the move all day long, through rivers and streams, over mountains and through valleys, to then sleep on a bare bamboo floor, without sanitary facilities and living on a very modest diet. The now 70-year-old missionary does it to show his scattered parishioners what Christians should really be like. And so he doesn't think twice about making himself the Mangyan's advocate in the struggle for their land.
We're in Calapan. Here in the capital of the island, the Mangyan are out of place on the street. And yet there is one place in the middle of town which belongs to them. The Mangyan Mission Center. When Father Dinter took over the leadership of the mission about 20 years ago, it was clear to him that the Mangyan had to seize control of their own destiny.
So haben wir 35 Mangyan von ganz Mindoro eingeladen.
So we invited 35 Mangyan from all over Mindoro, opened up a house in Calapan to them, and asked the question, what was your situation like 10 years ago? What's it like now? And now you can be open. What will happen in the next 10 years? Have you got any wish whatsoever or a question for the Mangyan Mission? After 2 days and 2 nights of sitting together, they came out to us. And because there were several teachers among them, they'd put it in writing. The first thing was, actually, we've only got one wish: land. Land is identity. Land is life. Without land, we are nothing.
To Father Dinter and his fellow campaigners, it was clear that the land question couldn't wait. They set about recording the Mangyan areas on maps for the first time. With the help of the Mangyan, and with the support of the German charity Missionaries, they developed a convincing method. They created three-dimensional maps, maps which even the uninitiated could interpret.
Unlike on a white piece of paper with lines, here you could really identify a feature, and then they could really see it. Oh yes, here, that's where I was born. There, next to the hill, there's the river, and so on. All this information from the Mangyan was then put down on paper by the government. The government people were now involved in putting that down on paper, and those are now the official documents.
Recording the areas where the Mangyan lived was one thing. Just as important for Father Dinter and his team was increasing the political pressure on the government. It was a milestone when, in 1996, a law was passed in Manila that for the first time acknowledged the right of the Mangyan to their homeland.
The government have put their signature to the right of the Mangyan to their land. Getting that in the land registers. We're still working on that one. But the main job's been done. That's been the main task of the Mangyan Mission over the last 10 years. And that's where we've invested all our resources and personnel.
Ein erster Etappensieg.
The first victory on the way to winning the war. Now it's about staying in there in order to shape this legal framework. The almost 100-strong team of the Mangyan Mission, half of which are Mangyan, will not rest until the real estate is also entered in the land register as Mangyan property. What's harder to change through the law courts is the way people treat the Mangyan. They still get, for exactly the same work, much lower pay than other Filipinos. Being treated as equal citizens is still a long way off.
We're in Bait, the Mangyan Center in the south of the island. Here, every Friday is market day. There's not much produce which the Mangyan sell here. On the other hand, for most, living deep in the mountains, it's the only chance to buy things which they don't make themselves. Driven from their former territories beside the sea, today the Mangyan have to buy their fish. But even while they're buying, people let them know that they're just Mangyan.
The exclusion shows itself in little things. They go to the market and buy a meter of material, but the meter's only 80 centimeters. Or they're shortchanged. And when they want to catch a bus, they have to stay at the back of the queue. The Mangyan have simply come to accept that.
Manzalay, a small harbour town in the south. Casual labourers are unloading the fishing boats which lie at anchor off the coast. For several years, Father Dinter was the parish priest of this little town. At that time, just before his arrival, a dreadful thing happened. His predecessor as parish priest, also a missionary of the Divine Word, found 5 dead Mangyan children on the beach. Someone had abducted them after school and interrogated them. They were forced to explain why the missionary took an interest in them. Many people suspected that he'd found valuable natural resources in their areas. To cover up the interrogation, they'd killed the children, thrown them into the sea to make it look like an accident. After all, they were just Mangyan children. With Father Dinter, we're driving to Panatayan, the village where the 5 murdered children had lived. The road to the village is new. The missionary is driving it for the first time. Before, there was just the difficult route over the mountains.
Marta.
50 families live in Panatayan. There's a small school here and the village's own shop. As much as Panatayan is like other Mangyan settlements, this village has something very unusual. In the midst of the bamboo huts, a library. The Dutchman Anton Postma built it. He was Dinter's predecessor as parish priest. The murder of the Mangyan children changed his life. He wanted to do more for the Mangyan. The more time he spent with them, the more he got an insight into their cultural heritage. When a Mangyan carved characters in some bamboo, his scientific interest was awakened.
Then I said, "What are you doing there?" "I'm writing a letter." "You're writing a letter?" "Yes," he said. And then I asked a stupid question. I really didn't understand. "Can you read that then?" "Of course I can. I wouldn't be writing it if I couldn't read it."
Postma began to study the language of the Mangyan. He discovered that Philippine culture had been kept alive by the Mangyan, and he discovered a rich treasure trove of poems. He collected thousands of them. Postma's research is overwhelming evidence of the great cultural heritage of the Mangyan.
We're just Mangyan. Instead of saying that, I am a Mangyan, I have my own culture, and I also said this to the Mangyan. Don't forget you're a Filipino, like the other people, and you have a culture that the other Filipinos have long forgotten. That's what I said to the Mangyan. They didn't know it themselves.
The Dutch missionary's commitment to the Mangyan was so radical that he wanted to share his whole life with them. After he'd been released from his vows by the Pope, he married a Mangyan woman. Father Dinter married the couple. Since then, Postma has lived with his wife and 4 children among the Mangyans in Panatayan. For the Mangyans, his presence is a sign of deep respect.
For 100 years, people have said to the Mangyan, "You're good for nothing, you're lowlife." And now they're gradually starting to feel, we are not inferior human beings.
Iskol, numan kita tanan namirma, nangakot tanan mga baras sa labay, uman matupad hunda.
The men and women of the village have gathered in the church hall. It's about the new water pipe that's due to run through the village underground. A joint project, so everyone should be involved in the planning process. Only if all the landowners agree will the project go ahead. The Mangyan of Panatayan are already in the happy situation of no longer having to fear that they will be driven from their land. When Anton Postma was still the parish priest here, he managed to buy the land using Styler Mission funds in order to gradually hand it over to the Mangyan. For the Mangyan, the beginning of a future without fear of expulsion.
Einen solchen Zusammenhalt und wo so viele da waren und sich die einzelnen Probleme jetzt der Dorfprobleme.
Such solidarity, and that so many were there to tackle the village's problems with land and water. How they discussed and sought solutions was very impressive. Something good really has developed there.
Strengthened by a new self-confidence, the Mangyan have begun to revive old traditions and skills. Today, the women don't just weave their own traditional clothing. They make textiles and small articles which are then sold at the Mangyan Mission in Kaplan, so ensuring them a small income.
Die Mangyanen haben schon immer.
The Mangyan have always sold things to make some money. Again and again they were defrauded when doing so. Or when do they get their money? Here, there's one place now where they immediately get cash for their wares, and we sell the things on. And it's also a way to promote the Mangyan culture.
Every morning it's the same ritual. The national anthem is sung throughout the country before school. And yet the traditional clothing gives away the fact that this is a very special school. This is where only Mangyan are taught. Father Dinter is not just any old guest. He founded the school in Bait 20 years ago to give the Mangyan children living in the mountains the chance of an education as well. Among the pupils is Anton Posma's youngest daughter. Whoever graduates from here, the world is his oyster.